An officer performed a search of the defendant and found an unholstered pistol in his pocket.
What? They just start searching?
Located in the hotel lobby, only in underwear for a brief time, but advised he heard a firearm being racked, chambering around. The defendant pulled away from the deputy.
Detain him for what purpose? What's he doing wrong?
What you just watched? That was the breaking point for Juan Watson. A call for help turned into a police search that left the judge speechless. But what was he really hiding? This is the state of Texas versus Juan Watson. It looks like a simple evading charge, but the truth is buried in a bizarre hotel encounter. Juan called 911 for help, yet police found him in the lobby in his underwear, claiming a man named Chaz Burke was the threat. Timeline shifts, stories change, and a weapon is found where it shouldn't be. At stake is a year in jail and a permanent criminal record. If you want to understand the psychology behind why stories fall apart under pressure, hit subscribe to see how justice is served on this channel. Let's start from day one in this Harris County courtroom.
You are Juan Watson?
Yes.
Mr. Watson, you're charged with evading arrest or detention. You're facing up to a year in jail and or a $4,000 fine. We're going to do probable cause. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can or will be used against you. You have the right to have an attorney present. If you cannot afford one, one will be appointed to you, sir. As you can see, your lawyer is here with you on Zoom now, so you're not alone. Okay.
Yes. On December 25th, 2024, officers arrived at a hotel in Harris County, Texas in response to a burglary of a habitation report. The defendant had made the call and was waiting in the hotel lobby. One moment here, let me double check.
The defendant made the call.
As well, I'm gonna read the DMs to see if maybe there's a typo in our summary.
Actually, you see that one night.
I believe he did make the call.
Yes, Judge. So the defendant had made the call and was waiting in the hotel lobby. The defendant advised he had a weapon and ID in his backpack. The police then escorted the defendant to a hotel room to retrieve his belongings and then off the property, where it was determined there was no weapon in his backpack. An officer performed a search of the defendant and found an unholstered pistol in his pocket.
Buckle up, guys. Today we are stepping into a courtroom moment that begins with confusion and quickly turns into something far stranger. Juan Watson called police for help, yet moments later he becomes the center of suspicion. Officers arrive at a hotel lobby and the story immediately feels off. He's nervous, barely explaining what happened, and somehow a weapon becomes part of the conversation. What began as a call for assistance suddenly shifts tone, leaving the judge and everyone watching wondering how the situation spiraled this quickly.
What? They just start searching? What's he doing wrong?
I'm going to read the full DMs, Your Honor, because
So,
Your Honor, if we could have a moment so I could read this, because it seems like there's a lot more information that
Let's just read the DIMs. That's all I want to know.
the entire DMs, Your Honor. Yes, Judge. So, the officer dispatched to a burglary of a habitation, later turned to an evading call for service at a hotel known as The Element. Upon arrival, the officer made contact with the defendant. The defendant was observed behind the front desk area and did not at first advise he was the caller. The defendant appeared in a nervous state of mind and at first was not forthcoming with information for the investigation. The defendant later advised he obtained a room with another person who he advised he did not know and was only known as Chaz Burke. And the defendant advised he had traveled to the room with Chaz, and upon entering into the room, there was a third male in the room already, and the defendant advised he left the area out of fear of another unknown male.
Alright guys, now the details start getting even more unusual. Watson explains that he rented a hotel room with someone he barely knew, a man named Chaz, only to discover a third stranger already inside the room. Fear pushes him out of the room and into the hotel lobby, but the scene witnesses describe is bizarre. Watson reportedly standing there, in only his underwear, while someone claims they heard the sound of a gun being racked. The timeline feels messy, the explanations feel incomplete, and the courtroom begins sensing that this story has more layers than it first appeared.
And advised the third male was invited to the room by Chaz, and upon briefly speaking with the front desk employee of the business, advised the defendant prior to arrival was located in the hotel lobby, only in underwear for a brief time, but advised he heard a firearm being racked, chambering around, but did not observe this action and only heard it. The employee then advised an unknown female traveled to the hotel, brought the clothing the defendant was observed wearing on scene, which was the sweats and bottoms. The defendant advised the handgun was of his when asked was located in his black backpack. He was observed to have on his person. The backpack was temporarily taken possession of by the officer for safety, due to the defendant advising a firearm was located inside the backpack. The defendant on scene had advised and given consent that the handgun could be obtained from the backpack and checked in TCIC, and also advised his ID was also in the backpack and could be obtained on scene by law enforcement. The room the defendant and Chaz had booked, which was number 424, was checked for Chaz or other unknown suspects with negative results, and none of the other suspects were spoken to during the investigation. The defendant advised he was traveling to the secured room in order to obtain any of his belongings in the room due to the defendant was to be criminally trespassed from the business and escorted off the business. The defendant at this point began to walk away from the deputy and continued to attempt to walk away from the deputy, but ultimately the officer escorted to the room without incident. Once the defendant was located back downstairs outside of the business, he obtained his driver's license from his backpack, and as he was conducting an NCIC check on the defendant, one of the other deputies on scene advised the handgun was not located inside the backpack as stated. The defendant was patted down for weapons on scene, and the deputy discovered a black spring-filled handgun located in the defendant's pant pocket without any type of holster for the handgun. The handgun was temporarily taken by the officer for safety. At this point, another deputy arrived on scene to detain the defendant, and the defendant was observed to be in a highly nervous state of mind, and the defendant pulled away from the deputy.
Detain him for what purpose? What's he doing wrong?
So he was being criminally trespassed, and then he had previously...
Yeah, but you give him notice and then you get him to leave.
He told the officers that there was a weapon, and the employee told them that there was a weapon, so they were patting him down because they had those facts that there was a weapon, because they didn't find it in the backpack. So, but he had just told them that there was a weapon somewhere. So they patted him down for safety, and that's where they found the handgun.
Okay.
I think, Judge,
Now this is where the situation takes a sharp turn. Watson had already told officers that a handgun was inside his backpack, which should have made things simple. But when deputies checked, the backpack was empty. That discovery immediately raised tension, prompting officers to perform a pat-down search. And that's when the unexpected happened. They found a handgun tucked inside his pocket without a holster. Suddenly, the conversation shifts from a strange hotel encounter to officer safety, suspicion, and a chain of decisions that would soon lead to the moment that defined this entire case.
like you said, they have to give him some kind of notice that he needs to leave the premises. Just them suspecting that this might be a criminal trespass.
Well, hold on. I mean, but this is an evading. So
Yeah,
at some
and
point,
as it-
he allegedly must take off.
And as it continues, so once they attempt to detain the defendant for officer safety due to having the handgun without declaring it, the defendant was in a nervous state, and he began to pull away from the deputy and began to flee the scene and evade deputies on the scene. So all deputies were in full issued uniform, and the defendant was given verbal commands to stop and refused all commands given to stop and continued to evade, which he was then pursued off the hotel property and onto an apartment complex. The officer continued to pursue until he lost visual sight of the defendant, and the defendant was then later positively identified on scene from his driver's license, the Illinois driver's license. So after they attempted to detain him, following that, that's when he ran from the officers.
Matt, do you have anything?
Well, I don't really understand why they were trying to detain him.
Well, I think at the end of the day, I think that what they were trying to do is perhaps they believe something nefarious, right? So they're trying to just trespass him out, which I think is well within their right. And had that just happened, and I think it would have been just nothing else would have transpired. But the fact that due to him leaving, they're unable to perform the trespass, right? And I think that's it's problematic.
Okay.
Yeah. So, Mr. Watson, I'm going to find that there's probable cause to go forward with your case. I'm not going to put any conditions on your bond. Just be careful. You get into a pissing match with people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you got a lawyer. Because you have a lawyer, I will waive your appearance. You don't have to waste your time coming to court, but just stay in touch with Mr. Horak and he'll tell you when you have to come back.
Okay.
I know that you live in Ohio.
Yes.
Right. So I'm going to waive your appearance. You don't have to come back. At some point, if you have to come back, Mr. Horak will let you know, and then we'll go from there.
Okay.
So for now, I'll just have you sign a reset with Victoria, and then we'll just get you out of here.
Okay. Thank you.
Judge, how's April 1st through the 3rd?
April 1st through the 3rd.
The second would be great, Victoria.
Got it.
It's yours.
Thank you so much,
Okay,
Judge. May I be excused?
You got it. Have fun.
Take care.
The decision is final. The judge found probable cause to move forward, but Juan Watson walked away with no bond conditions and a ticket back to Ohio. But here's the question. If you're the one who called for help and the police search you, is fleeing ever justified? Comment below, Team Watson or Team State. If this case got you thinking, hit like. Share this with anyone who loves courtroom drama.
And here's the moment that truly changed everything. As deputies moved to detain him, Watson reportedly grew nervous and pulled away, ignoring commands before running from the scene. What might have ended as a simple investigation now turned into an evading charge. In court, even the judge questioned parts of the situation, but ultimately ruled that probable cause existed to move the case forward. Watson leaves without strict bond conditions, yet the case remains open, raising a question for everyone watching. When you call police for help, can running away ever make things better?